So, today, I may be playing Deltarune the way Kris intended it. Actually, no, I'm gonna let Future Me explain this, we're just gonna get into the challenge. We control Kris and Deltarune, and decide most of their actions for them. So today, I thought, what if we didn't control Kris? How would Kris choose their own adventure in the events of Deltarune? So I spent the previous day planning this 3-page Google Doc for everything that I would have to do as Kris. It started with not skipping the intro cutscene, so we can ask Noelle, and only Noelle, to be Kris's partner. Yeah, that's literally all I had to do before the Dark World. But hey, Kris wouldn't go back to bed and somewhat end up in the Dark World, so we have to do this. Something that I actually forgot to write down is if Kris would listen to Relice's legend or not, but I feel like they would listen to it, so I went with that option. Now we're fighting Lancer, and it's time for the battle system. Since this is the first encounter, I decided that Kris would defend on their first turn, since they probably don't really know how the system works, and then after Suzy attacks Lancer, Kris would follow suit. This isn't actually what I had written down though. I wrote down that Kris would only defend and let Suzy attack Lancer, so I have no clue where Kris fighting Lancer came from. Me not being able to read my own instructions aside, we made it to Relice's tutorial, so Kris can understand how the battle system works, and how they can use their axe to spear enemies. Why is Kris spearing enemies rather than fighting, you may ask? Well, Kris may be a prankster and mischievous at times, but we've never seen them actually want to hurt someone, especially in Chapter 2 if you step off of the switch when Noelle is walking across. So I think it's much more likely that Kris would not attack the Darkness and try to spare them instead. Let's just forget that I made Kris fight Lancer and move on to my chat saying like, I don't think Kris would want to skip Ross's dialogue. Yeah, but where... that... Do you want to be here for like 7 hours? Fine. We'll read every bit of that dialogue from now on. Happy now? This is gonna make this recording twice as long. Oh look, the Great Door! Here we have a dialogue option of staying silent or saying that we can handle it. It might make more sense for Kris to stay quiet here, but I actually want the first option because of Relice's dialogue after. You see, in Deltarune, we may decide most of the things Kris does and says, but we have no control over their expression or tone of voice. And Kris doesn't say this awkwardly or confused, they say it normally. So I determined that it makes sense for either option, and I chose that they can handle it. Since Kris is quiet and doesn't have many friends, I will assume that they will try to avoid fighting the Darkness as much as possible in Chapter 1. And if you can't tell, yes, I will be assuming a lot of things in this video. If you don't like it, go watch someone else! Upon getting Suzy on the team, I think that Kris would let Suzy attack the Darkness. It might not be in their nature to fight everyone themselves, but I don't think it fits them to try and force Suzy to not fight the Darkness either. This does mean that we can't get the pacifist ending of Chapter 1 if Suzy deals too much damage to something, but does the type of ending really matter? No. It doesn't. The trio reach the Great Board, and here Lancer asks us if we have a team name, and everyone but Kris puts a name in Lancer's bucket. He lets Kris choose the name since they look like they don't care, so I pulled up a random number generator on Google. I spelt it wrong, but it's fine, and got 3, so we went with the Lancer Fan Club. Not long after we got stopped by K-Round, which totally unexpectedly is completely the same as any other playthrough. But then Suzy left the party, and we're back down to just Kris and Relice. Because Kris seems to be fond of Suzy, I think they would try to talk to her whenever they can. Other than that, we really don't have much else to do with Kris in the forest. Just continue forward, spare everything we encounter, eat some salsa apparently, and then reach a sweet little boy who definitely isn't Lancer. It was time to make the thrash machine, and Kris would probably want to design something that would make Suzy happy, so I went with the coolest parts I could find. Suzy would like this, right? Alright, all of that work was for nothing. But now we have a decision for if we want to fight or not fight Suzy and Lancer. Kris probably doesn't want to fight them, but I could see them wanting to fight Suzy to make her happy. It's much more likely that Kris doesn't want to fight them though, because they like Suzy, and they have that pacifist nature. After winning through kindness, Suzy started having a change of heart. She always knew that she and Kris couldn't return home without each other, and she started to think that maybe it would be better if she listened to Kris. But Lancer ran away, leaving Kris to dodge all the diamonds from the Rudens. And it accidentally died! This could have been bad, since me and my chat had decided not to overwrite Kris's save file. But luckily, this game has checkpoints, so I respawned right back here. Now we've been thrown in jail, and there are a few things that Kris would do here. 1, they would likely pick up the iron shackles she gave to Suzy. 2, they'd probably try to rattle the bars to no avail. And 3, they obviously perpetuate the moss. Who wouldn't stock up moss when they're locked in prison for eternity? Anyways, we say yes to being worried about Suzy, Suzy kicks Lancer's ass, and then the two make up almost instantly. Now that's the sign of a true friendship. Real best friends fight about the most stupid things every hour of every day, but instantly make up and forget about 2 minutes later. Kris decides not to fight Jubble, since they probably don't take the elevator to this random place without Susie or Ralsei with them, and other than that, the castle doesn't really have much else to commentate on. We fight enemies, complete the easiest puzzles known to man, and then enter the shop, where Kris buys Susie a stronger weapon to try and please her. And because Kris isn't a bitch, they buy Ralsei a new scarf as well. Why did that last point about Susie sound so romantic? Okay, look, Kris isn't trying to get a date with Susie or anything idiotic like that. They're just trying to be a good friend and become better friends with her. You'd appreciate it if someone bought you something. Even if you don't actually like what they bought you, it's still free stuff, so hell yeah! That took up more time than it needed to. Kris let Susie try her idea against K-Round, and the trio moved on to face the king. Nothing really happens here other than everyone trying to reason with him. So they won, then lost, then won again, then sealed the fountain. And you might think that's the end of chapter 1, but we got some stuff to do in the light world. That stuff being to interact with the pie before going to bed, so Kris can eat the whole thing in the middle of the night. The next day arrives, and Kris goes into class, just to fall asleep. Honestly, I do the same. Together with Susie, Kris returns to Castletown, and the entire place transforms into an actually populated town. And while we're here, wouldn't you love to live in a place like this if the Dark Worlds were real? Like, you can just escape reality and chill with your friends in your own rooms, away from everyone else. It'd be amazing. Actually, you know what? Nothing would change. Us content creators already do that. Moving on, Kris and Susie would probably want to explore around town and do pretty much everything they could so they don't have to go and do their group project. So I spent like 20 minutes talking to every NPC here, completing everything in the dojo, going back up to our rooms to waste more time, before finally deciding to leave and work on the group project. Fortunately, there's a Dark World in the La Barbie, so it's time for another adventure. The first thing I wrote down for this Dark World is explore every room with Susie. As you can probably tell, we're basically 100%ing this chapter, because Kris is likely excited to adventure through the Dark Worlds with her friend. We said we'd rather perish the Queen here, and then refuse to join Birdly. Yeah, we basically skip like everything in Cyberfield, but there really isn't a lot here. It's just a lot of exploring, and talking to Susie when possible. But worry not, because now we fell into the Cyber City, wasn't allowed to go with Susie, and now Kris is on their own. They see Noelle in the distance, and not long after, she joins the party. Now Kris could backtrack here just like how they used to explore together, but I just kept going forward and trying to locate both Queen and Susie. We interact with the Ferris wheel, and assured Noelle that Susie would go on it with her, didn't step off the switches like all you psychos were hoping for, and got lost in the craftsmanship of these boxes. Not long after, Kris found some more moss, and you can guess what we did here. Because of Kris's prankster nature, they put the cheese in front of Noelle, which someone moused on them. They easily spared them though, and oh god, that's a lot of cheese. Now we're at the second Bridley fight, and nothing here really changed. We just used Axe, and win the encounter. Then we have Spamton, and I was debating having Kris fight Spamton, since they seem scared of him. But I went with Kris's pacifistic nature, and just took the deal. We're not fighting Spamton Neo though. We can clearly see that Kris did not like that encounter. After meeting back up with Susie and Ralsei, we give the prize to Susie, and proceed to the mansion. Kris interacts with everything in the room, also sticks her head into whatever this is, and honks, which I thought was pretty funny. It just feels like something I would have done as a kid. After meeting up with Ralsei again, we just continue through the mansion, fail to balance the party, and reach Birdly, who takes Susie away. Ralsei asks us here if we think of him as a lackey, which Kris does not. And then we have the Acid River, which I always hate going through in the Deltarune challenges. It's just so long and boring, and literally nothing happens apart from the rules fight. But here we actually have some more dialogue options to choose. First we say it's strange, then... Okay, Kris actually doesn't say anything for the rest of the ride. They do make a rude gesture to the camera though, since Susie likes it. Rules is normal, and Kris wonders about Susie. I never watched these cutscenes after my first playthrough, and having to watch them here was actually kind of relaxing. We don't have Kris dialogue options though, so let's just skip over this. After Susie rejoins the team, we enter Noelle's room, steal the monster statue that looks exactly like Susie, and proceed to fight Queen. There is nothing of interest that happens here or with Gecko Queen, so Chapter 2's Dark World is complete. We return to Castletown, and apparently Susie gets a plush of herself in a room if we gave her the prize from earlier. We say hi to Lancer, and leave the Dark World due to some stuff in the Light World. I decided that Kris would go to the creepy bunker to hang out with Susie and explore around town with her, but I can also see Kris skipping that altogether. After that, we went to the hospital to play the piano for Susie, but since I'm technically still controlling them, they can't play it very well. Just pretend they can play it normally though. But then we went home and had a sleepover with Susie. Damn, I said Susie so goddamn much in this video. To close off Chapter 2, we agreed with Susie to have Lance and Ralsei enter the Light World with them, and told them that we'd go with her to the festival. And that's Deltarune the way Kris intended. Let me know your own personal theories on what Kris would do in the comments down below. Now we gotta think of a funny way to end this video and then immediately cut to the end screen. Wait, didn't I use this joke in a video already?